All right, you guys. My name is Mason Sweden. I did my major project over Egypt. Egypt is a nation that's long celebrated the religion Islam. Islam is also known as Muslims here in the United States. This is a religion where they celebrate Ramadan, which they celebrate with like fumadanas and then other sorts of special foods. They also sacrifice a goat or a lamb if they can afford it. If they can't, they get donated a lamb from people who could afford it. The Nile is also a major thing that runs through Egypt. It's everybody's probably heard of it. It's referred to as the God of Egypt, as it does provide Egypt with a lot of arable soil, which is only about 2%, but it does allow Egypt to grow what they can grow. Another thing about food is Egyptians often steer away from meat. They don't like to eat meat. They consider it a luxury, or it's part of the religion. They would rather eat bread and pasta and beans if they could. But meat is a big valuable thing in Egypt. It can get very expensive. Egypt is also a low context culture, which means it values company, and pharaohs. You've often never seen a pharaoh alone. This is why Egypt is considered a low context culture. Is they do value company with each other. Egypt is not very high on the literacy rate scale. It's actually pretty low. It's only at 75.84%. United States is probably around 89%, just as a comparison. This can be improved upon if Egypt could establish a better schooling system. However, diseases can run rampant. Things like West Nile and malaria cause a lot of deaths. There are actually 19 deaths per 1,000 births in Egypt, which is an astronomical number. In order to decrease this, we have to urbanize Egypt and see if we can help with making Egypt a bigger health industry. Due to this lack of urbanization, Egypt has very little food and can't grow very much. This is what causes Egypt's food changes. The prices skyrocket and go down. Meat's actually really another example of one that's real expensive. Bread is something almost every family can afford. Women often make that in their homes. This is something that allows every family to have food. It's also regulated by the government. Bread has to be a certain weight and a certain size in order to be sold. Etiquettes include lots of things. Some things aren't followed here in the United States, such as being the oldest male, you have to be served first. You never eat with your left hand, regardless if you're left-handed or not. And always make sure your neighbor's drink is full. It's just like a complimentary thing. If their drink's getting low, you refill it for them, or their other neighbor does. If yours is low and nobody refills yours, you pour a little in your neighbor's, regardless if it needs it or not. And that's just a sign that, hey, you need your drink refilled. Another big one is while you're a guest at a dinner, it's always nice to thank the host and give compliments to the chef. If you are invited to a dinner, the host is usually the one to pay. And that's just a common way to settle the arguments of who's going to pay at the table, kind of like we have here in America. Some of the common preservation methods of ancient Egypt were salting and drying. These two were the most used, as these are easily able to come by. This was used for foods that weren't going to be able to be eaten quickly. Salting is used by putting a lot of salt on it and drawing the water out, making it unavailable to microorganisms, while drying is used to be put in the sun and just dry out. Common foods during holidays were full mudanas and malakaya. Full mudanas is more like a creamy type of bean that has lots of protein, while malakaya is like a spinach-like vegetable. Those two are also the most famous foods that Egypt is famous for. People will go there just to try these foods. Habits that could be changed and encouraged in Egypt are religious foods are eaten on holidays, but they're great sources of nutrients. I know they're only eaten on holidays, but these foods should be encouraged to be eaten year-round, as they provide lots of fat and protein and carbohydrates. They're full of nutrition just by the way they're made and what they consist of. This could help build the population and strengthen the health deficit that's there. Things that could be changed is the presence of meat in the Egyptians' diet. It's real tiny. Most Egyptians can't afford to eat meat, and if you do, they would rather not. Meat is considered a luxury. It's also considered very, very religious. Being that beef is probably the only thing available, they haven't tried turkey and salami, things of that nature, because pork is against Islam, so they don't eat pork at all. But since they aren't able to receive other meats that aren't pork or beef, they stay away from it as meat is expensive. So this causes probably some of the biggest protein deficiencies in Egypt. Finally, food habits once they become established in the United States. They do begin to change once the person enters, and the first thing that does change is the usage of meat, the usage of food, as the access to food almost triples once they get into the United States, because Egyptians don't have a lot of food, and they don't have access to a lot of food. But once they come into the United States, they have access to new things like turkey, salami, sushi, whatever they want to try, as we have a bigger way of getting that food in. Things like their core foods, like bread, won't change because of the way they eat at home. Bread is one of the biggest things that Egyptians use in almost every meal. This will continue to be, as Egyptians will continue to use bread just like they did in Egypt, as America also uses lots of bread. Religion will still influence the way these people think. They will never eat pork, as that is part of their religion, that is an unclean animal and they don't want to eat it. Regardless of how much food they can get, religion will always back up what the person believes. They will never eat it. This is what I found out about Egypt, and I'm glad I learned a lot of it. Thank you.